Hello and welcome to this special edition of Herndon Live. Thanks so much for joining us on this special edition. I'm Jack Norcross.
And I'm Emily Ann.
And I'm James Pingator.
And we have actually a lot to discuss today as we head to the next slide here and talking about some of the things that unraveled yesterday in this presidential election. This includes the presidential race, which was a complete surprise. And to be honest, I don't even know if a lot of people across America have even comprehended what has happened. But before we get to all that, I want to first show you a clip that we were at the Donald Trump rally in Leesburg, Virginia. This was this previous Sunday, which turned into Monday eventually. I went with James Pingator and Ryan Alcorn, and we just really decided to, we went with the media as we did with the Hillary Clinton rally, but we really got a different vibe during this election. Let's take a look at the clip we have of that.
All right, special edition of Herndon Live. I'm Jack Norcross. Thanks for joining us. A lot going on today, a lot to see.
Just over.
So we are live here at the Trump rally here in Leesburg, Virginia, and it's been quite a day for Mr. Trump. He started today in Iowa, making his way through Minnesota, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and it will eventually be ending up here. The current time is just after 10 p.m. He was supposed to start speaking at 9:30 p.m. However, it's looking like it may be more toward 11 or maybe closer to midnight as well. So it's going to be a long night for these hundreds, thousands of people who have joined us tonight to see Donald Trump speak. Now, with only 2 days to go in an election, a lot has developed today, which is Sunday. We saw Hillary Clinton, after her email scandal was revived from James Comey, the FBI director. Today, we learned that there will be no further charges on Hillary Clinton. James Comey sent a letter to Congress last Friday saying that he was going to reopen the case after discovering new emails on Huma Abedin, Clinton's top aide's estranged husband, Anthony Weiner, who's involved in a sex scandal with a 15-year-old. On their computer, they found new emails. Those emails mostly claimed to be duplicates, so nothing was new. Donald Trump added this stop today in Virginia after realizing, after already having a packed day on the trail. Mr. Governor Pence was here yesterday in Fairfax, Virginia at George Mason University, and today he is on the road, including stops in North Carolina and beyond. Donald Trump has a busy schedule as well tomorrow, ending the day in New Hampshire, and then the victory party will be in New York City tomorrow. We have a lot to cover, so stay tuned.
All right, my name is James. I'm with ACTV, and I'm with Tony and Patrick, and I'm going to be interviewing. So, when did you decide to support Trump, or do you support Trump?
Well, I decided last night when I saw on Twitter that he was coming to Virginia. I immediately wanted to come because I came from the Netherlands, especially from elections, to watch how you guys do elections.
Well, that's very cool. How about you?
I was initially thinking we support him, but when I started listening to Trump's speeches and rallies, the primary source, I became a Trump supporter. I started to look at his policies and what he was saying, and that really impacted me as a voter. His policies on trade and immigration really hit home, and globalization and nation states. So that's why I support Trump.
All right, very interesting. So, we know how long the lines are here at these rallies, especially at the Trump rallies. Explain the experience to the viewers on how, like, just the process of getting into these rallies.
Oh, it was tough to get in. We came in early, took a taxi from DC. Took us more than an hour. We stood in the line for 4 hours. Then now we're inside. We were expecting Mr. Trump at 9:30, but it's after 10 right now. So it will be a long night. It's worth it.
Yeah. How about you?
This is my third Trump rally. I would say it's very, well, I can only speak for myself. I'm lucky that I live around here, only 30 minutes away. Other people come from out of state, or even, international visitors come and they're in town, so they come to see Trump speak. The lines, if you want really good seats, you come really early, hours before. But it's it's all worth the wait, you know, just to hear him speak and be part of the experience.
All right. So, do you have any last thoughts that you want to tell the viewers about these rallies and so forth?
Go vote on Tuesday and make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely go vote, and you know, just remember the alternative is a Hillary Clinton, which could speak for itself, but Donald Trump is going to make America great again. So you can feel it in the rallies. So yeah, make America great again.
All right. Back to you.
Together, we will make America wealthy and prosperous again. We will make America strong again, like the people that are here at 1 o'clock in the morning. Strong. Strong people. Strong people. And all those thousands outside, strong people. I admire the people here. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. God bless you. Get out and vote. Who will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. It is time to cut our ties with the failed politicians of the past.
Just about to join back the podcast here, so I just want to wrap it up. All right, and we're back now. That was, once again, a clip from Donald Trump's rally in Leesburg, Virginia, that myself, James Pingatore, and Ryan Alcorn attended. I want to go to James Pingatore first. James, watching that video, being there, how does it compare? You were also at the Hillary Clinton rally back in July that we went to. Just compare the two for us.
All right, so the Trump rally, it was more like a concert. Like, lots of people, energetic, and just energetic for Donald Trump. At the Hillary rally in July, I didn't feel the same energy in the building as the Trump rally just this past Sunday. So that also kind of, you know, turned the tide, like how more enthusiastic the Trump supporters were than the Hillary ones, at least here. And from what I've heard all across the country, they're more or less the same. So I kind of thought that this is why I thought it was a close election, because his supporters were, even though they didn't come out for him, they were energetic and, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's begin taking a look at the projections here. The projection is, once again, folks, that Donald Trump will win the U.S. presidential election. Here we go. Donald Trump will win the presidential election. As of right now, by some estimates, as we're going to see, he has 290 electoral votes, but that is not all. Hillary Clinton right now, Secretary Clinton, has 228, but obviously Donald Trump's, President-elect Trump's numbers are above that 270 threshold. This is interesting numbers, pretty tight, and we're going to explain to you in a second on how the gap could either grow or shrink here in a second. But I want to take a look at the next slide because this is really key. Because this happened once in 2000 as well, but the presidential results, Hillary Clinton has 47. I'm sorry, this is backwards. Hillary Clinton has 48% of the actual raw vote, whereas Donald Trump has 47%, meaning that Hillary Clinton would win the popular vote. James, what does this mean for the country? Do you think there's going to be more contention with the Electoral College and how that system works?
There might be. I don't see the Electoral College going away anytime soon, but this is showing that the Electoral College is a confusing and a really weird system.
Complicated process too, yeah.
Because the basis of the presidential election is just going to the states that have the most electoral votes. Usually that ends up with more of the popular vote, but this time it didn't. So that means usually they were targeting the states that actually mattered, And I'm not saying like Idaho and them didn't matter, but like they were targeting the states that matter.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our next slide here because this is where it can get interesting because New Hampshire and Michigan have not been called officially quite yet, but I want to take a look at the margins there. In New Hampshire, this is for electoral college votes. Hillary Clinton is up by just a small margin. That's 0.3%, and that's very critical in such a small state. That's really just a few votes. Donald Trump's 47.3%, and then there's the third parties there. Emily, what kind of effect do you think these third parties, looking at how close the race is between the two main candidates, do you think these third-party candidates are taking more votes away from Hillary Clinton, who lost the election, or Donald Trump, who won, even though he won the election, it's still taking votes away from him?
Well, first I want to say that almost if you include Dr. Stein, 5% is actually kind of huge for third party.
No, great point.
It's a huge amount. It's hard to say who they're taking away from. It can go both ways. I know people who it doesn't really matter with whether they're Democrat or Republican. They just blatantly don't like either. So they went with a third party because that they felt, even though it's called throwing away your vote, they felt that's like who represents them best. So they could go to sleep feeling like, hey, even if my vote didn't matter or count, I feel good with my vote. So I think that they did make a huge, I mean, this is not just New Hampshire, but in the whole election, I think it was about 3% that third parties took away. So that can mean a lot, especially in situations like this where it's a 0.3 difference.
Yeah. So we're still waiting on New Hampshire. The problem is some counties are having needing to call in the absentee votes and counting all those because the election is so close. But I want to also take a look at the state of Michigan, where it's still contentious there. And let's take a look at those numbers right now. As you can see, there is still that 0.3 difference between Mr. Trump and Secretary Clinton. But this time, Donald Trump is in the lead. James, to you, what would it mean if Donald Trump won the state of Michigan? I mean, this was definitely part of the what is the so-called Democratic firewall to winning the election, and obviously that may not be the case.
This is huge for him. Everyone, like coming into the election night, people were like, "Yeah, it's in play, but we're expecting Hillary Clinton to take the state." Once the results started coming in, all the blue-collared union counties of Michigan were the voter outcome, or the voter turnout there was huge for Mr. Trump, because they represent their values as blue-collared, hardworking, unionized Americans that typically vote Democrat.
Right, and as we saw in the polls actually before the election said that Mrs. Secretary Clinton was 3.4 points ahead of Donald Trump, and if the results end where they are today, it's going to be a 0.3% difference, which is quite interesting. Talking about New Hampshire, New Hampshire was always kind of a little bit in Hillary Clinton's predicted win, so that's pretty interesting. But I want to take a look, I think, at what is next is the electoral college map, if we can pull that up after this. Now, this is the current state of the race right now. Secretary Clinton and Senator Kaine have 228 electoral votes, and Governor Pence and Mr. Trump have 290 votes. So if we look, Emily and James, at the beginning of the night, we were kind of not getting a lot of, we weren't getting Florida in, North Carolina in, or Pennsylvania, but those all turned out to be red states. That's pretty significant, wouldn't you say, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I remember staying up because Florida was at the 95% count for a really long time before they really declared it as a win for Trump. So we were all just sitting there twiddling our thumbs, wondering if he was going to get Florida or not. So that was pretty close. I think that in the end he pulled further a little bit more, but I don't know. I still find this really shocking. Over the break, we were all discussing how bizarre it was, how even things got, and how unexpected that was. So.
Right. All right. Well, let's take a look at our next slide, because if we project that Hillary Clinton will win New Hampshire and Donald Trump will win the state of Michigan. That'll put Donald Trump over the 300 mark at 306 and Secretary Clinton at 232. And James, looking at some of these polls, some of these were completely wrong. I'm just looking. I think the biggest one that we saw was Wisconsin, which we were talking about with our Facebook Live viewers joining us today, because that had, right before the election, it had a 6.5 point lead in favor of Secretary Clinton, and it turned out to have a 1 point lead for Donald Trump. That's a 7.5 difference in the polling.
Yeah, because like I said before, people didn't want to come out to support Donald Trump, and so those poll numbers didn't accurately show that show the results of what happened last night. But so basically, future reference: don't listen to the polls too much. They're not. Basically, don't listen to the polls too much.
And to you, Emily, do you think from here on out we just shouldn't trust, polling in politics, or do you think it's just a unique situation with the candidate that we had running for president?
Personally, I do think that this is very unique. Normally, just because of the bizarre behavior in the elections, CNN described these voters as leaners because they're the type to lean over and say, I think I'm going to vote for Trump, that sort of thing. So they didn't want to come out and say it. And also, the polls got a lot of millennials. And if you look at the stats of people who actually did go out and vote, millennials did not make up that group, unfortunately. It said that if all the millennials went out, Hillary would have won by a landslide. However, they didn't. And there are, six? I was talking to someone about this today. There are about 6-point-some million people in Virginia, and only 3.5 million voted, something like that. So, 6.5, excuse me, around 6 million eligible voters. Eligible, or they're already registered. They can vote, but only 3.5, which is around half of those people, actually did. So, if people really went out and voted, I'm sure that these numbers would be very, very different. So,
Sure.
It has to do with people not going out to do their civic duty, and people who just under their breath didn't answer these polls honestly, or they just didn't outright say that they were a Trump supporter.
Right, we're looking at the state of Virginia here at the election results here, and and it turned out that Hillary Clinton would won the state with 49.9% of the state of the vote, and Mr. Trump with 45%. For a while, James, we were seeing that it was a clear possibility that Donald Trump could win the state, but we were still waiting for Northern Virginia. And why is Northern Virginia so crucial to the state of Virginia?
Because that's where most of the people in the state of Virginia live. And because the D.C. suburbs, a lot of people work in D.C. and a lot of people live in Virginia. So the big three counties, Fairfax County typically goes Democrat, my bad. Loudoun County is usually a swing county. This time it kind of went more towards Secretary Clinton.
Right, that was 55.4% of the vote year.
Yeah, and he was pushing for that too. He went there like 3 or 4 times just to try to get the voter enthusiasm. Didn't work in Loudoun County, but it worked other places in the country. And then Prince William County used to be very Republican. Now it's flipped to Democrat.
It's even more Democrat than Loudoun in our election here, but it is really impressive. Some other things that we're looking at here is also looking at some of the states that we didn't expect Donald Trump to win, including the state of Pennsylvania, I would say. And James, there's all these what they call the Rust Belt builders, and they're kind of along the border here in counties like Mercer, right along the border with Ohio. Talk about why these voters turned out for Donald Trump in this part of the state.
So back in 2012. See where the Pittsburgh is? All around that used to be blue. That was because they were blue-collared, unionized workers. They voted for Donald Trump. And then, even then, in the middle of the state between Philly and Pittsburgh, they didn't really have high turnout percentages back then. And Donald Trump made made them come out and got the high turnout rating in those large rural counties in Pennsylvania. It's basically the steel factory counties as well.
Right. And then, kind of just going over the border to, Ohio, and we also see more of that
Same thing.
along the border there. Same idea. But one area that I found interesting was the state of was Michigan. And one thing that I know, we were talking about John King, our favorite, kind of does this all night on election night. He was really focusing on Wayne County here. And the reason for that was Clinton's margin in this, very an area dominated by African Americans. She was not running up the numbers here, and that was needed for the rest of the state. She had 67% of the 67% of the vote in Wayne County, which includes Detroit. But that obviously wasn't enough. And looking at our exit polls, it seems as though that race, African Americans moved 7 points in favor of the Republicans. So it doesn't look like the Democrats had the support as they once did when President Obama was running in 2008 and 2012. Emily, was there any other states that you found to be interesting, just to the composition that you heard about last night?
Well, just a shout out for John King, because that man knows every county in the United States. Very impressive. But Pennsylvania was definitely a huge one for me. I was like, what? That's crazy. And I mean, when you're looking at this, it's like all red and just like a smattering of blue. Not even a smattering. It's just like a dot. And everything else, for the most part, like I sort of saw coming. Florida, I was like, all right, when are they going to hand it to them and stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, just Pennsylvania was the big shocker.
Yeah. And then, but also looking down into Florida too, James. You know this area pretty well. What surprised you and what did not surprise you about Florida? There is a big Latino population in Florida.
Well, the Latino voting population in Florida has an asterisk, and that's because it's the Cuban population. Cubans tend to vote Republican,
Right.
and the other Latinos tend to vote Democrat. And so that's why Florida is such a wild card. A lot of Cubans live in Florida. So if you see that light blue county, that's where Tampa is. Usually a very big Republican or Democrat, well, not big, but sizable. Trump actually did better than Romney in 2012 by 1%, but still.
Yeah.
And then Jacksonville, I thought Jacksonville was going to go to Hillary Clinton. Didn't turn out that way. It actually went to Mr. Trump. And then the big three counties, Miami-Dade, Broward County, Palm Beach County. That's where all the African Americans, Jewish Americans, and Latino voters are predominantly in that state.
So we got a lot of the minority votes in that.
Yeah. And one county that I found interesting, this, because it was a very close election back in 2012 with President Obama and Governor Romney at that time. But this county of Pinellas County here, this was a county that the Democrats took in 2012 and 2008. And this was one of the counties that Donald Trump flipped for the Republicans, and that was needed in order for him to win the state.
It was.
Yeah. So a really, really interesting election. Focusing on the presidential election before we move to our local elections, any final thoughts that, Emily, to start with you, that just how you saw this all unfolding and what you take away from this election?
Definitely don't believe what you hear. I was really shocked because, as I mentioned earlier, over the break, we are surrounded by a generation that supported Hillary, very liberal community. So I was really like, all right, Hillary Clinton, like I was expecting her to become the next president. But obviously I didn't really factor in just how many people did not like her. And I mean, this has it could do with the emails. I mean, for the most part, I don't think that had as much of an effect, but it's just that people really did not trust her with our government, and they did not want her in that position. So I think that from what I've heard, a lot of people who voted for Trump, who would normally maybe vote for Hillary or are more moderate, they voted for Trump because they didn't want Hillary to win, not because they cared for Trump's policies or anything.
Right.
So this election was just a total circus, totally wild. We don't know how things are going to go from now on in the future. quite, because there's still a lot of stuff coming up that could change things. So
Yeah.
we'll
James,
see.
finally to you before we get to these local elections.
Don't look at the polls into it that much. Like Minnesota, there was like a 7-point lead for Clinton, right? It was something like that. And
Wisconsin, you mean?
Michigan or
Michigan had a
3.4 lead for Hillary Clinton and a 6.5 lead in Wisconsin.
And then Minnesota was something like that. And he was
Yeah.
contesting Minnesota
Yeah, it
for
was
most of the
very
night.
close.
I mean, it eventually went to Secretary Clinton, but hey, he almost took down the whole big blue firewall.
Right, and I know many people are still processing this election just because of how everybody had the notion that this election was going to go one way,
just
and in fact
not
it didn't.
enough people went out to vote.
No,
Nope.
not at all. All right, so let's take a look at some of our local elections here. Let's hit the next button. Let's take a look at some of our other Herndon Live projections that we can make right now. This one was a win for the incumbent, Barbara Comstock, in the 10th Virginia Congressional District.
Wow.
That's just on the other side of Herndon, not the town of Herndon. But she won 52.6% to Lou Ann Bennett, somebody who never held any office position but was into the real estate business. Kind of similar to, I look at this and I go, this is kind of like the presidential election except flipped. We have kind of a Washington insider, Barbara Comstock, who was the incumbent, and Lou Ann Bennett, who never held office. But in this case, it also was flipped in that Lou Ann Bennett, the outsider, didn't win, but Barbara Comstock did. So
Again, I find this interesting because when we held a poll, we had Lou Ann Bennett winning by like almost 2/3. I mean, that was again our generation.
Fairfax
more liberal,
County, liberal areas.
definitely.
Yeah.
But I think that this is interesting, and actually, I think it's a lot closer than I expected.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because the 10th congressional district is I think a little bit has more conservative areas in it.
When you get out into Winchester.
So 47 is a huge huge number.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at our next Herndon Live projection that we can make. This one, I believe, regards the mayoral race here in the town of Herndon, and Lisa Merkel will be reelected as mayor. She won pretty much overwhelmingly with almost 68% of the vote to Jasbinder Singh with 32% of the vote. So congratulations to Mayor Merkel. And then also there's the Herndon Town Council. And this one is a big bit of more of a shake-up here as we go to our next slide to show you the results of that election. When we take a look here, here are the top 6 candidates are the ones that are on become on the Herndon Town Council. Jennifer Baker came in first out of the Town Council with 14%. This means that she's most likely to become vice mayor. That's typically how it works. Grace Helm Wolf, second with 13%. Sheila Olam, 12%. Bill McKenna, somebody new, never on the Herndon Town Council before, 12%. Jeff Davidson, 12%, and Signe Friedrichs. Those last 3 are new. And then there was Connie Hutchison and Dave Kirby, who was on the town council but did not win re-election, and then Roland Taylor, but he didn't fit on this thing, so we didn't include him. But anyway, this they and James, interestingly, they kind of ran a campaign together. These 6 individuals.
That's what we call the alliance.
The alliance.
The alliance. Not shocking here. I kind of expected all 6 of these to win. Kirby, I just didn't see him winning re-election.
He had the more conservative view on the council.
Yes, he did. But town of Herndon being a little more liberal than per se Loudoun County.
Right.
But it's just I predicted this, and all the surprising was how close the percentages were from Fredericks and Hutchison.
Friedrichs, and Hutchison, that was pretty close. There's a couple points, point difference there, so that's good. All right, and then another big prediction, something that we discussed, projection that we discussed a lot on this show, was the meal tax. We definitely did a lot of polling as we look at the results of this one. Now, the meal tax was going to support Fairfax County Public Schools, but as we can see here, that failed with almost 54% of people saying they did not want the meals tax, where yes is 46%. Emily, what'd you make of this one?
I just find this so funny. I mean, because I feel like just people don't know. They didn't educate themselves on what it was, maybe.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel. And also when people see tax, they're like, nah. It's just a few cents, though. It's supposed to go to our schools. The schools, people don't understand that. I mean, if we can't afford certain things, they're going to cut other parts of the school system, or activities. So this was kind of like, oh, man, like, this was our chance.
Yeah, but
and people just had no idea what it was.
right, and the no movement had all these yard signs, James. Everywhere they definitely wanted the sign.
I saw one vote yes
Yeah, I
sign
think I saw
out of
one,
the whole
too.
election.
I
that's
never even saw one.
That's excluding the polling center, but one yard sign
Yeah.
of the vote yes. So the vote yes, that's probably why they lost, because they didn't have a strong enough campaign against
Sure.
like the team now.
Yeah, they just needed to really inform
I mean, the
people
restaurant,
on
the
what this
restaurants
was.
were on board with
Yeah.
this. You know, a lot of people. You know, a lot of millennials too were on board with the idea of, you know, I don't want to pay more for my food, not
then again,
realizing
there
that this
was
is
a-
going to the schools.
Then again, there was a no sign at Herndon High School.
Yeah, which is a little bit
doesn't
of
make
a
any sense.
yeah, little,
But
yeah, we'll see. All
so
right.
no meals tax.
All right. Well, it was a really interesting election, and we're gonna have to see and wait until the inauguration, you know, and see. You know, it's all about who's gonna be placed in the cabinet, Donald Trump's cabinet, who are gonna be his top advisors. Considering that this is somebody who's never held political office, the first presidential president-elect to never hold any government or military experience ever. Governor Pence, on the other hand, he does have a background with the House of Representatives and as governor of the state of Indiana. So a really impressive night. And Emily Yen and James Picator, thanks so much for joining us. And remember to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. We're streaming right now on Facebook Live, so you can watch this back anytime you'd like. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Good night.